I'd like to now introduce our next contributor, Funmi. Funmi Para-Mallam is a Professor of Gender and Development Studies and a member of the National Institute in Kuru Plateau State in northern Nigeria. She's also the National Coordinator of Christian Women for Excellence and Empowerment in Nigerian Society. And Funmi is now just going to pick up on some of the themes that Jason introduced, looking with specific reference to the impact that this crisis is having on women and children. Thank you very much, Funmi.
Thank you so much. It's a real privilege and a joy for me to be here. And I hope you can all hear me, because sorry if I phase in and out. We have a little bit of a challenge with the connectivity here in Nigeria. But I'd like to just start by giving you a little bit of a situational background about Nigeria generally and how we've been impacted by COVID-19. As you know, Nigeria is the most populous African country. We have an estimated population of about 200 million people in Nigeria. And yes, just like Jason was, he was saying, we have a lot of diversity in Nigeria, ranging from our 6 geopolitical zones, north, south, east, and west, different levels of income, different cultural and religious backgrounds. And that has also been reflected in the changes that have been occurring from the COVID-19 pandemic. First and foremost, initially there was a very slow, it came in very slowly to Nigeria, let me say that. And so we thought we were basically immune. And all of a sudden numbers picked up and it began to really spread very quickly. I think now we have over 7,000 cases in Nigeria. It's been mainly a community-driven spread. Initially, it started out by being what people refer to as an elite disease. So you had people who had traveled abroad, lots of people had been outside the country coming back with COVID-19. And so people thought, oh, this is a big man's disease. But now it's become a community-driven disease. And because of the pickup in pace and spread, the government, the federal and state governments have adopted different types and different phases of lockdown. So like right now, where I live in Plateau State, we are under a kind of lockdown that lasts from Monday through to Thursday. And then weekends, Friday weekends, people can go to the mosque, go to the church. But we have restricted movements and restricted numbers of people who can gather, and people are advised to practice things like social distancing. Now, because of the attitude, the cultural attitude of people, originally people saw this as something that was coming from Western propaganda. So it's like, oh, you know, there's nothing really like COVID-19. That also affected a lot of the people in terms of accelerating the spread. And we have stay-at-home orders, things like workers having to stay at home, and that embraces all workers. And it's important to note that in Nigeria, a vast majority of people, especially women, are seasonal workers in the informal economy. And so when you tell them to stay at home, then that has different impacts. Well, I'll come to that a bit later. There's also been a reliance on China, funnily enough, because COVID-19 hit Nigeria in the context of a very, very failed healthcare delivery system, where already we were ranked 187 out of 191 countries by the World Health Organization. So the systems for responding accurately and on time, appropriately to COVID-19 simply were not there. And so the government has taken this as an opportunity to rely on China. China offered a lot of help in terms of PPEs, in terms of medical support and what have you. And that has been met with a mixed grill, a mixed kind of response from Nigerians. Some Nigerians are very skeptical, some Nigerians are very open. That has caused some political tension in the country itself. COVID-19 has not been selective in terms of gender, economic class, ethnicity, or religion. And so we see that it's been a great leveler. And one of the fallouts of that is that high up people, the elite, who used to run out of the country for medical treatment. You would recall that some years back, our president was in the UK for medical treatment. They can't go out for medical treatment, and they have to, adjust to what is here. So let me specifically look at some of the impacts of COVID-19 on women and children specifically. So the first one is the fact that there has been a very sharp rise in gender-based violence, particularly intimate partner violence and forms of domestic violence like child abuse and even abuse of domestic helpers. I was just on a Zoom meeting before this one, which was talking specifically about this issue. And it described gender-based violence as the shadow pandemic. 40% increase, for example, in Lagos State alone. In reports, and a police deputy superintendent of police said that that's even underreported because people are not really reporting the actual incidents. There's still a lot of reticence in reporting it. So that's one of the negative impacts. I think there are both negative and positive. Let me first go over the negative ones. For women, there has been an extra burden of care in terms of caring for the sick and the elderly. Obviously, Nigerian women are the ones who typically tend to do those things. And so this pandemic has just increased an already culturally imposed burden on women. A lot of women, like I said, women predominate the informal economy, which tends to be seasonal, casual, and low income. And even the low income, many women don't have access to that low income anymore. So that has increased their dependency to a large extent on their male partners, which could also probably have increased the level of intimate partner violence that we are seeing. During this lockdown, a lot of people have been affected very severely, particularly women, in terms of anxiety. I was just listening to a report that said that some women who had pre-lockdown, pre-COVID, were already in violent relationships, now being locked down with the partners, are reporting increased anxiety over things like that. A sad, very, very sad knock-on effect of the lockdown has been the increase in communal attacks on Christian communities. Some Christian communities in Kaduna State, in Plateau State where I live, mostly in the north of Nigeria, but also in other parts of Nigeria, have experienced very, very serious attacks with lots of people being killed. In one community, a whole family was wiped out. And this has occurred despite the fact that people are supposed to be on lockdown and without any recourse to justice, no access to justice, and no apprehension of the culprits, to the best of my knowledge.